Welcome to today's show. To start things off, I want to tell you something. You're not stuck because you're lazy. You're stuck because you're blind. I'm speaking to you attorneys out there who are wondering why it is other guys seem to be able to grow and scale their firm, but you seem stuck right at your revenue ceiling. You can't work any harder. You can't move forward. And that's the conversation of today is when you know you're not lazy and you're a hard worker, but you can't seem to scale what's actually happening. Today's episode is going to be taken directly out of our book, The Invisible Ceiling, that has just been released. So if you want to get a free copy of that, it's super easy. Click the link inside the description, and you can get access directly into that, and we will ship this book to you for free. So get yourself a copy of the book, but we're going to dive into it today. Before we do that, though, Shane, how you doing, man?
It is in the depths of pollen season here in Georgia, so I have been better, is what I would say. I'm on a bunch of anti-pollen medicine or whatever, so a little bit of Dayquil, a little bit of sinus decongestants and all that. We went on our attorney cruise last week, right? That's the annual cruise where we take our top producers and their spouses out. It's not always a cruise, but it's an annual trip.
Yeah.
And that was great, but I left when pollen season was starting, and then I think I came back right when it was a hammer. So it hit me fairly hard and a little not unexpected, I guess. I've historically pollen's bad for me, but it hit me harder than I anticipated, is what I'll say.
Yeah. Well, Shane, I didn't mention to you. You were gone, but I ended up making a quick trip over to North Carolina, which I was kind of sad that you weren't there because you were on your cruise. But, dude, it was the funniest thing. I get out of my hotel the night I was there, and I get out of the hotel. My car's, like, dusted in this yellow haze. Yep. And I'm like, what the hell is all over everything? And I had these black shoes on, and then throughout the day I was looked down at my shoes, and they were, like, covered in this haze. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And it was one of your attorneys I was talking to yesterday. They were like, hey, Trevor, don't be an idiot. That's pollen.
That's pollen, right.
And I'm like, that's why. I thought I was getting a cold. I was literally like, I think I'm getting sick because my head got all sinusy and, and all. So, yeah, dude, you guys it's no joke over there on the East Coast. I don't know if it's everywhere over there, but at least in your neighborhood, bro, it's
it's certainly in Georgia and North Carolina. I don't know if it's everywhere, but it's certainly in the parts that I live in. Me and my wife were joking about we may become like snowbirds almost, right? But pollen birds. During the 6 weeks of the pollen season, we leave and go somewhere else and then just come back.
Yeah. I'd never seen anything like it. When once I was informed of what it actually was, I was like, holy shit. I bet everybody, man, if you're somebody that like reacts to it a lot, that'd be brutal for those couple of weeks. So, well, I'm sorry you're having to take all the.
If I'm not on my A game today, I apologize. I apologize, but it's pollen season, and I'll be back next time we talk. So hopefully,
dude, it's all good, man. It's all good. Well, and you've got an exciting trip coming up, which I think is a cool thing to talk about real fast, just because you just took a week off, like last week, right? And now you're going to take a couple weeks off next week. How in the hell are you doing that while also running a multi-million-dollar law firm? Like, how is this possible, Shane? I don't get it. I'm confused.
It's funny because me and my CO were actually talking yesterday, and I think our growth last year was in revenue was about somewhere between 20 and 25%, right? From 2024 to 2025. Mm-hmm. Which and we're a big firm, so it's not like a small number. That's like over $4 million in revenue. I think it was $4.5 million in revenue.
Yeah,
we bounced up, and only a small part of that was tied to one big case too, right? It's not like we got one Hail Mary that changed everything. How do I do it? I mean, it's systems, right? It's systems, it's processes, it's working on your people, but it's also trying to make things as routine as you can. And what I mean by that is, you've got your marketing and sales stuff that just works on a routine. You've built some infrastructure so you're not the bottleneck all the time. If you've got multiple attorneys, you've got some kind of system in place so that everything doesn't flow to you. I mean, so it's really just treating your law firm like a business. Mm-hmm. And if you look at most businesses, a real business is not designed for the boss to be there 100% of the time and make all the decisions, which... Yeah. As lawyers, we get into that, right? And I mean, you're in the depths of that probably until you pass like 3 or 4 lawyers, I would say, where it's very easy just to be the bottleneck, to run everything through you. We've all had the associate where, most of us have been an associate where you had a boss and they had to prove everything.
Yeah.
So that's how is just building a business that allows you to do it, right? That doesn't depend on you being there 24/7 constantly.
Well, I'm sure most of the attorneys listening right now, when they hear that you're taking all this time off and still having growth, they're like, "What the hell?" Because in their mind, it's just like you and I have been at at the beginnings of our careers. It was like, well, that's impossible. What you're doing, you can't do that because they are the bottleneck, and that really lends us into our conversation today, which is the most basic, which is awareness. Like, you have to start to become aware that you're stuck because of you, but it's very easy to not see this. Like, I love my parents. My parents were great. We had a great relationship. Wasn't perfect, definitely not. But what I love about my relationship with my parents is that they taught me a very key lesson. The problem with the lesson they taught me is that I got stuck in that lesson. And I'd imagine a lot of you guys are the same way. And it was that hard work will always get you the result.
Yeah.
The problem is they left it at just the hard work. And so the assumption I'm going to make with every one of you guys on the show today is the fact that we're saying, hey, you're not lazy. It's not that you don't know how to work hard, but what happens when all you do is work hard, your mind starts to put you as the one that does all the doing and the working and it took me a long time to realize that the hard work was actually getting in the way.
Well, and
right?
And I think too, we think that the producing it, we equate that to hard work, right? And hard work is something to be admired and stuff like that. But I will tell you, most people who are in the weeds down in the grind, this other work is actually just as hard.
Yes.
It doesn't produce a product, but I've done some stuff in my own firm where I've mapped things out, and it certainly wasn't easy, right? So it's a different kind of work, is what I would say, but it's but it's certainly hard. Some ways it's harder because it's unusual and it's different, right? And you talk about being aware and seeing you've got to do something different. This is a different kind of work that I actually think is harder for a lot of lawyers in the beginning, right? Certainly, because at the end, you may not have a big product, right? We can all do a complaint. We can do some discovery. We can do a demand. And at the end of the day, we've got a product. Boom, we can do something with to make money. Your plan for your firm to grow or creating an SOP for somebody to answer the phone, you got a 1 page and it may have taken you 6 hours. It doesn't look that impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it puts you in this. I'm curious, Shane, because I dealt with this guilt part of this equation, which was really weird for me. So I'm curious if you did the same thing. Like, so I still remember who he was. I remember the situation, but I remember when I made money off of my employee when it was a thing. It was something I used to do. Right, but I'd grown to where I couldn't do it anymore, and I was like, well, this is what you're supposed to do. That all the experts are telling me, hey, I got to hire someone and stop doing everything. And I remember he went and did the thing, and I got the check for it. And there was this really weird sense of guilt, and I thought that my employee was going to think I was this big lazy asshole, sitting up in my office. So there was a natural resistance because I didn't actually do I didn't create the product like you're talking. Like, I didn't do that part of it, but I got the check. So I'm curious, did that happen for you at all, or am I just alone on that?
No, it definitely happens. I think it happens to everybody. And then there's another layer where you realize you can delegate down the stuff you don't like to do to somebody else. And I always felt a little guilty, like, they're going to think I'm a jerk because I'm just giving them the grunt work or whatever.
Right.
And versus me doing it, right? Like, there's 2 lawyers here, me and another lawyer. Both of us know how to do this stuff. And I'm saying, like, you got to go do for me, it was probate and ante-litem stuff. And I'm just waiting for him to be like, dude, maybe we're not partners, but, I'm not just a gopher kind of guy, right?
I'm not a bottom feeder. Like, why are you making me a bottom feeder doing all this crap?
Yeah, you can't just give me all your garbage work. And so I had guilt along those, but then also guilt, like you say, just ready for them to say, well, you're making all this money. And sometimes you are, but also, I mean, I actually had this conversation with my wife the other day about the amount of stress as you build your business as the owner that you take on is different than somebody who just works for somebody else.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, the Amex bill, the payroll bill, writing the checks for everybody, the rent, all of that is stress, right? And as a lawyer, if one of your associates or one of your paralegals screws up, guess who pays the piper? You. Mm-hmm. You're the one who's going to have to talk to that client. You're the one who might be talking to the bar or a malpractice lawyer or just dealing with the upset client, whose case was messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, you deal with all that. So there is guilt. I think we all go through that guilt. And there's various levels of guilt the bigger you get to. But a lot of times that guilt is all made up. I mean, I remember when I first started taking half of Fridays off, I thought my senior team was going to be like, Shane's so lazy.
Right.
And instead what happened was I had migrated to where I was like mostly off on a Fridays. And then if I showed up at the office, I had multiple ones like, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not like I'm a terrible person when I'm not here, but like, what are you doing here, dude? You're not supposed to be here. You said you're taking Fridays off. Part of it was self-interest because if I'm in the office, I'm generating more tasks for them to do. So they lose their catch-up day.
Right.
But some it's also because it tells them they're doing something wrong because the boss can't be gone.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing to accept and understand is like that's your first awareness is that you don't have to do everything and that you've got a team, and as you start to build you can rely on it. And I think what happens is you get really busy, you feel successful, but what you've done is you end up building a trap around yourself if you're not careful. And this is where you get stuck. And the hardest thing is when you're starting out, you have to do that. Right? You are all the hats. You do wear everything. And, then you'll slowly bring people onto the team and slowly start to let things go. But what happens and what I've watched happen with every single attorney I've worked with is there are certain things that you just have a story and a belief that you have to do that. Right? That I can give away this, and this. I can hire someone to do this, but this thing, for some reason, I have to do it. And it's not always the same thing. Every attorney kind of has their own stories around it. But what is exactly the same is when you're in that space, you actually have created a prison for yourself. You've created this trap around you. And then to grow, you think you need to just do more of that thing.
Yep.
But it becomes impossible, right?
You
don't even really end up having a marketing problem. You don't have a close rate problem. You don't even have a revenue problem. What you end up having is that you don't have clarity and the visibility. Like you can't actually see those, like you said, like the example you gave about doing the SOP, right? Going in your office and creating an SOP just on how to answer the phone. They could take you all day to do it. But if you're not spending the time doing those types of tasks and you're only in those ones that you refuse to let go of, what ends up happening is you get done with a 12-hour workday and you feel like there's nothing else you can do. And you throw blinders up and you just kind of like, well, this is the succumbing to this is just the way it is.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm waiting to get lucky. Like eventually I'm going to be able to grow. It's if I just keep pushing.
In the PI space, I get this great case, right? That's going to be worth $3 million. Well, you're not going to regularly get those. I mean, unless you're doing some kind of very specific marketing and you're not going to randomly get a bunch of $3 million cases.
No.
And I was neck deep in that. I mean, I was in that space for a couple of years, right? Between years 3 and 4, maybe 5 in my firm. I was right there, Trevor. And I was like, literally, I didn't think it was possible to work much more. I mean, like for real. I mean, that was a year. I think I had 3 weekends off all year.
Yeah.
And 2 were in December, right? And when I say weekends off, where I didn't work either day, right? Saturday or Sunday. And at the time, I worked Friday night. I worked Saturday. My wife would come in and do all the accounts on Sunday, and I kept the kids, right? So that was my day off. I kept my, 3 and 5-year-old. I mean, so she could go.
Well, there's no way you could have worked any harder. And nobody from the outside would look at you, Shane, and be like, man, well, you're lazy or you don't work hard. That's why you're not growing, or that's why you've plateaued. Right. That's why you're not. No one, everyone would validate you. Your whole world would validate you. You would validate it. But then the frustration comes when that keeps happening and you're like, is this it?
Right. And I think that's the key, right? Is this it? Because on paper, and anybody, I validated my life, right? I was making, several $100,000. I felt like I was banging it out. I had my own business. We'd broke $1 million in revenue, so we were winning. Yeah. It was just brutal. And we hit a point where I couldn't work any harder, right? That wasn't going to change stuff. It was just like, I just, like I said, there weren't any more hours in the day, and I do argue, tell most people I think they overestimate the number of hours they worked, but by golly, at that point in time, I was working. I mean, there wasn't scrolling on social media is what I would say.
No. Well, and you're doing the work. And I think the frustrating part is when you feel like there's nothing else you can do, or you don't know. And instead of trying to figure it out, this is really where, why we titled this book, The Invisible Ceiling, is because it's invisible, right? You can't see it because you're not aware that it's even there.
And if you're not around other people. Yeah. Who have grown something big, they're going to tell you the same thing. Like my generation, well, work harder, dude. Yeah. Or, work smarter. What the heck does that mean, right?
What? Yeah. You can't. Well, and I think that I like that statement, and I love to watch people misconstrue it, because they think when you say work hard or work smarter, not harder, they think that means don't work hard. Yeah, we're gonna go and let you know, no matter what level you're at, you got to work hard. Like that's always a part of it. So we're going to assume that that's the common denominator. But then it becomes this game of what needs to shift. And we'll get into that in other episodes as we dive through more of the chapters of the book. But just merely as this overview today, you've got to be aware. And that's really the key, is being aware. Okay, what I am doing is not going to get it done. And you have to be open to the fact that the direction that you're heading is leading you down a trap door. Like it's not going. You cannot keep doing what you've done. Right? The statement, "What got you here won't get you there," couldn't be more true when it comes to growing and scaling and actually building past these thresholds. Once you've hit that point. Now, I want to make sure you guys hear me, because if you're not at that point yet, meaning you're starting out, you're maybe a year or two in, you still have time in the day, right? Meaning you're still in the grind. Like, let me be straight honest with you. So you're going to have to put the time, you're going to have to grind through it. Doesn't mean it has to be to where you get to where you were at, Shane, where you're like, holy shit, I'm working every single day of pretty much every single, like that's too far into the grind.
Not the ideal.
Yeah. Like we make the pivot before that. But these are for you guys who, you want to grow and scale. And it's really just becoming aware and seeing that, hey, this isn't going to get me there. What do I do? Right? And today's show is not necessarily to talk about those steps to get into that. We'll dive into those for sure. But it's really just, it's awareness. I'm surprised at how powerful that actually is. When I take an attorney and we spend literally usually weeks, it's not even like a day or two, it's weeks working together to just get them aware that they'll see the problem, right? Because you're so trapped in this world that you've built that you can't even see that you're actually the issue, and the thing you thought was the thing you thought was like your superpower. It was, until it became the kryptonite of your ability to do it all and to be the smart guy in the room and to be the one that could work harder than everybody else. And
today it sounds silly, but when I was starting out, it wasn't like there were tons of I won't even say they weren't there. I wasn't aware of like coaching groups and mentor groups. And everybody would be like, find a mentor. I'm like, what does that even mean? Find a mentor, right? Yeah. Find a guy down the street who's doing what I do and have lunch once every 6 months. I mean, that's not a mentor, really. And because I went high school, college, law school, Army, go work for somebody else, right? I wasn't around a bunch of successful business owners. And I say successful who wanted to really build something, because, you got somebody who owns a store downtown and they work. They basically bought themselves a job, kind of a great life, not taking anything away from that. That's where most of us are, honestly, in the beginning. You bought yourself a job. That's where a lot of lawyers are in this phase. They bought themselves a job, and it's a well-paying job, but they didn't build a business, right? And I wasn't around high-level entrepreneurs. I wasn't aware of business coaching programs. I was sort of get all your formal education, right? Everything was formal or through the school of hard knocks. There was no medium to help you skip anything, right? Or show you, hey, let's do this process. This will help accelerate your growth. Or a mentor, a group of 10 people who are all building law firms who I could call and be like, hey, dude, I'm getting my butt kicked here. What's going on? Yeah. Or even just share when you get together. I wasn't aware of any of that. So I'm in this silo by myself, doing this grind, making money, winning by all accounts, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say killing myself, but I mean, it impacts your health. It impacts your relationship with your wife and kids. I mean, I had a wonderful wife who comes right from the same background, right? Work hard. Yeah. So roll up your sleeves. If there was work to do at the office, she was there. No complaining. We're building a life. We're making more money than anybody else we know. We're just, not seeing each other that much.
Right. It's the sack, and I think that's what becomes the cost of this that's kind of unspoken, untalked about, right? And it's the lie that we're telling that eventually, like someday, we won't be sacrificing the time with the family and the kids and the trips and everything that you actually say you're building towards. And all too often, if you don't become aware of the problem, what ends up happening is that someday never shows up.
Right.
And you end up like very many attorneys I guarantee if you think about it right now, you can think of a handful of attorneys who've ended up in affairs, divorced, kids have no relationship with them, and their whole world just falls apart. And they were working hard. They believed the same thing you and I did, and it was this work hard, and then we're going to get there. The problem is they got trapped in the working hard, and then the someday never showed up, and their whole world exploded because you cannot maintain that forever.
No.
Because it's not what you wanted. Nobody said, hey, when I first day in law school was like, someday I'm going to work 16 hours a day, be trapped at a revenue stream, but at least I'll have a Mercedes and a nice house. But, my wife's going to leave me and my kids won't want anything to do with me. Nobody said that. That wasn't anybody's dream. Nobody was like, this is what I want. I want to grind myself to the, where my fingers are bleeding.
And I think it's important to, right, a lot of us are really good at doing it, right?
Yeah.
We can grind it out for years. Mm-hmm. I've seen guys grind it along like 12, 15, 20 years. And you're like, holy cow, dude. And they're like, well, this is life. I'm a lawyer. This is what I signed up for.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, you didn't, right? Now, you didn't sign up for this, dude. Or maybe you did, but
you didn't know you did.
Have to.
You signed up and you thought that was how it was. And I think to sum up today's show, it's the awareness that there's another path. So if you're listening to this and you find yourself in that place that we're talking about with this grind and you're not exactly sure what's the next step to get out, just realize the grinding path that you're on is not the only path. It is a path you can choose, but it has carnage beyond carnage. Plus, you're actually limiting your growth and scalability. Right, Shane, you and I both, like my whole world scaled, your whole world scaled. Once you finally understood this, it wasn't like the curve just slowly, gradually went like this, right? It went up, like it just exponentially, because once you realize, and this is kind of like almost like from an investor standpoint, like looking at compound interest and how, well, if I can leverage all these things that are around me, all these people and systems and process, well, all of a sudden it doesn't just require me. And as soon as you see that as that second awareness of a path, even without me or you, Shane, saying anything, you will start to see it. You will literally start to see things that you didn't see before, which becomes really that powerful play and that move. So this is something you can do on your own, or like you said, Shane, you can surround yourself with others who are doing the same thing. That's something, if you're interested in that growth and scalability model that we help attorneys with every single day, click the link in the description below right now. First thing it's going to do, we're going to give you a copy of our book. We want to give it to you for free, The Invisible Ceiling. And in the pages of this book, we dive into really the steps in the process to get yourself out of that barrier, that invisible ceiling, and starting to become aware and seeing things the way you want. So get yourself a copy of the book. Like I said, it's free. Just click the link in the description. And inside of that, you're going to get the opportunity for a select few to be able to jump into a deep dive conversation, so where we can actually kind of help you peel back the layers and create a 90-day plan for you to actually start to break through the ceiling and start to become, choose the other path, right? And not be in the hustler grinder, and actually build the life that you want without all the carnage along the way. So
I was going to say, Trevor, all I'd say is it's great to read the book, right? I think it's wonderful. But when I read books, and I read all these books when I was in this pit, right? When I realized I was in the pit and I was getting crushed, I started reading books, but none of the people seemed real to me,
right?
Because there's some famous author, right? And they're telling me this thing, and they're at this high level, and they're talking about all the things they can do, and I never saw a person, right? Behind it, they were this massive author, right? Business genius or whatever,
right?
And I think I didn't have the opportunity just to talk to somebody for a while. And then when I did, that was sort of when it clicked for me, is actually talking to a person, right? Like a real person who done it, who wasn't at this high, massive, New York Times bestseller list. It was a coach, and it was another law firm owner that I talked to. And, so we offer the deep dive there. If you qualify, I mean, there's nothing like getting in there talking to somebody who you can actually see and relate to, and sort of smack you upside the head and be like, dude, look at it a different way, right? And
well, it's being able to have that conversation with somebody who's been down the road, right? That you're trying to go down. It's huge.
I mean, it can be overstated how beneficial it is for somebody to dig into your business with you and talk to you, just talk to you about it in a way where it's not just everybody blowing smoke and talking about how great they're doing and pounding their chest.
Yeah. 100%. So to take advantage of that inside of the book or inside of the deep dive or any of the other training that we do, you can head over to legaledgecoaching.com or just click the link below right now inside of the I was going to say comments, but I don't think it's the comments. Well, it depends on what format you're listening. If you're on YouTube, it's going to be right down below in the description. If you're listening on audio on Spotify or any of the other listening platforms, it's going to be down there in the description as well. So other than that, we appreciate you guys being listeners of the show. If you got value from today's show, please share the show up. This is how this show grows to help impact other people. Give us a like, give us a subscribe so that we can continue to do this. And basically, Shane and I can continue to give back to people and attorneys just like you who are in the thick of it. You're in the grind, you're in the weeds, and this is that quick hit every single week to be able to help you see something more than what you currently see, and also maybe someone else in your community. So appreciate you guys being listeners to the show. That brings this show to a conclusion. We'll see you guys next week. Have a great day.